Hello and welcome to my YouTube video on learning the bagpipes. This video is meant to be informative and to kind of just give general tips. My name is Christopher Rodriguez from NYC Bagpipes, where I teach bagpipes to students, and I'm also available for hire. So this video is just meant to give info that might be a little bit different than you'd come across in other videos, which might be more about playing a practice chanter. This is just based on my experience, having played for 25 years about, and also just being a teacher. So hopefully this will help you out and kind of ease some of the pain that I had to go through when I started learning, and some of the pitfalls that students come across when they're learning. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. So I think one of the things you might want to think about when you're starting off this journey, because that's what this basically is. It's a journey, and a lot of cool things have come about through this. Is to kind of in the beginning think about, well, what is it that you want to get out of this? Like, are you looking to play with a pipe band? Do you want to march at the St. Patrick's Parade? I'm from New York City, so that's kind of a really big thing. And a lot of times when people are exposed to piping, they're like, wow, that's so awesome. That's something that I'd love to do. I've had other people tell me that they want to play in Scotland, maybe on a mountaintop, like something dramatic, like from a film. It could even be something like, I want to learn how to play Amazing Grace because I really like this tune. So, these are kind of things that you might want to start thinking about, like from the get go. Like, well, what is it that's drawing you to this? And maybe using that as kind of a way to kind of propel you to move forward. Because after we get through that initial sort of infatuation, if you will, we have to kind of think about, like, well, what are we willing to give in exchange to get what we want out of this? And, if you have a background in music, you might already know that, you have to practice regularly. And that's kind of the only way you're going to get better. So, if you have a busy schedule, if you're a parent, if you work a lot, whatever it is, we all have our lives. You'll have to, manage your time so that you're able to schedule a regular practice so that you can improve, because this is a skill, right? So, maybe you'll have to get up early and get up before everybody else or before you have to go to work to incorporate this into your schedule. It's basically going to be a sacrifice. And I always tell people it's sort of like an analogy of the tortoise and the hare. The tortoise wins the race, and you want to be able to be patient with this process. And that's something you might want to ask yourself, like, are you generally a disciplined person? Are you motivated? Or are you more like the person that one day this is cool, the next day I'm no longer interested? Because if you're part of the latter category, it may not work out as well. So you kind of have to know yourself, perhaps. But there's no harm in trying out. See if you like it. I mean, maybe you'll do it and you'll love it and it's awesome. And there's nothing wrong with trying out a new hobby, right? But just bear in mind that there'll be a certain level of sacrifice, and this kind of comes easier when you're already coming from a music background. You'll understand pitch, rhythm. Perhaps you'll already know how to use a metronome. Perhaps you'll know how to sight read. And if you don't, that's fine. There's only 9 notes in a bagpipe, more or less. So, these sort of skills can kind of transfer over to learning to play the bagpipes. But if you don't know how to play an instrument, that's fine as well. You can certainly learn how to play the bagpipes if you don't have a background. Just keep in mind you'll have to kind of learn these other musical concepts as well as pick up the peculiarities of the instrument. Um, One of the things about bagpiping that is kind of a good thing is that it does not require a high level of entry cost to buy the instrument. You start off on something called a practice chanter. And for all intents and purposes, this video isn't really going to cover that because there's a lot of other videos by people online that cover that. But you can get a good chanter for about $100. If you're an adult, I suggest you get a long one. Again, it'll cost you about $100. The regular size, which is called standard, is smaller. It won't cost as much, but to be honest, if you're going to buy one of these and you take care of it, it can last you a lifetime. So you might as well just get kind of that one and be done with it. It will take you about a year, give or take, with regular practice. Again, there's no way around that. In order to move onto the bagpipes, again, think about this as the analogy I used before, which is the tortoise. You want to be patient with it, okay? And you have to spend the time on the chanter in order to get used to playing on it before you move on to the full musical instrument, right? So if you're interested in buying a practice chanter, I'd be happy to recommend some. Just message me. I actually do have some for sale as well, so you could also order one from me, which I would greatly appreciate. So, how do we go about learning? So, I always generally advise people to learn from someone who is already qualified as a teacher. You don't really want to approach it on your own. I have a lot of students who have started to learn on their own. They might learn how to play a couple of notes, grace notes, etc., but they usually hit a wall and then they have to hire someone in order to learn how to play. If you're a musician, I suggest not to come with an attitude that you don't need one or that you don't need to start on a practice chanter. I actually had someone tell me that once, and I found it kind of rather presumptuous. You definitely have to start off with that sort of learner beginning attitude so that you can kind of absorb and proceed. Um, you could also learn from a band, which is how I had learned in high school. There happened to be a youth pipe band. But you never know what you're going to get with the band. The band might be very good, they might be very bad, they might be mediocre. And there are a lot of bagpipe bands, I hate to say it, that are pretty poor. So, if you learn with a bad bagpipe band, which you may not know if they're bad because, you don't have that experience, they might teach you bad habits. They might not really be in it for the music, and it's much better to play with a good pipe band. But sometimes with bands, they don't have the resources, the time, or the skill to teach. So, that all being said, I did learn with a pipe band in high school. There are youth pipe bands out there that exist, but you never know what you're going to get. And if you're not really sure, you could always message me about which pipe band that you might be thinking about joining, because I have a lot of connections in the Northeast in the United States, so I might be aware of some of them. If you're a musician, again, I strongly suggest that you learn from someone and it'll help you out a lot. So, how do we go about learning? In what format? I generally recommend in the beginning, it's good to learn online because it's fast, it's easy. You don't have to waste your time and money on commuting. Whereas if you learn in person, you'll have to spend time. And all that time that, it gets eaten up during your week, you could be using it to practice or do other things instead. But there are advantages to learning in person. There's definitely some advantages, like being able to communicate with the teacher. You can play together. You can resolve maintenance issues more easily. So those are some of the advantages of learning in person. If you're a parent and you're trying to push your child to learn, that's fine. I mean, a lot of parents do that, but just try to understand, like, is this something that your child wants to do, or they're open to it, or is this going to be something that they hate? They're going to be resentful. They're not going to want to practice, and it's just not going to be a good use of everyone's time. So you have to kind of understand that sort of relationship with your child. Like, can you push them and in a manner that's not going to create this sort of like adversity? And you also want to be mindful of the teacher's time as well. Like, don't expect them to be the middleman trying to coach the child. Like, oh, this will be fun. Like, it's like they shouldn't have to do that. Like they're there to teach, and that's it. So after you learn, which will take about a year, give or take, you'll transition to the bagpipes. You'll want to try to play on it regularly, which means you'll have to find a place that can accommodate that. Like if you live in a city like me, you might have neighbors who are not going to be enjoying that as much. So it's something to consider. You may want to eventually play with a band if you're not already learning from one. Again, I suggest joining a good band so it'll be more fun. You may want to try to start getting into publicly performing in front of others. whether it's your friends or family, or maybe you'll get more into like a, serious musician aspect of it. And you may even want to consider getting into a competition solo or playing with a competition pipe band. That's a whole nother aspect of bagpiping, which is a lot of fun. It's really cool, and which a lot of people are not aware of when they're first learning. So it's something else to consider. Um, as for the lessons, generally people charge anywhere between $40 to $60 an hour. People will generally try to learn about once a week, or perhaps they'll choose to do it once every 2 weeks. Either way is good. I really probably wouldn't suggest less than that because you want to, keep the momentum going. So if you're interested, if you have any questions, if you would like to take lessons from me, that would be awesome. Feel free to reach out to me. You can check out my website for more information. It's nycbagpipes.com. And if you found this useful, helpful, I hope that you will like it and subscribe.